Hello, good evening, and welcome everyone. Um, Good evening, welcome. If you are here, okay, I can see some of us are already joining. Okay, that's great. Um, so if you're here, let me know if you can hear me. Hello, welcome, Afiz. Welcome. If you're here, you can do well by just sending in a message or an emoji. Welcome, Abimbola. Welcome, Afiz. Welcome, Abimbola. It's good to have you guys here. And welcome, Miriam. Welcome. Welcome. So I think before, and a message was sent earlier for us to drop some questions that we might have. So if you actually have a question, you can go into Google Form right now and drop the questions so that we can actually take the questions and give a better clarification. Be available later. Definitely, it's going to be available, but sometimes attending in person can be beneficial as you can actually participate in the question and answer session. So if you have question, I would recommend you stay. But if you don't have any question, then you can always come back and watch the live session. But it's actually more engaging. So let me see. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, so if you can hear me, just drop a comment. Let me be sure that everyone can hear me. Okay, I think the network is getting better. Uh, okay, I think we are going to start. We are going to start instead of waiting for the network. I think the network will get better over time. So, I'm just going to go ahead and start the session. So if you have difficulties hearing me, I would like you to actually drop it in the comment section so I'm actually aware of what's going on the other side. Okay? So if you can't hear me, make sure you indicate in the comment section so I can actually uh, inform the team. Okay, so we are good to go. So we got some questions from different students, and over the course of this live session, we are going to answer some of those questions. But for now, let's go ahead. Let me see. Okay, you can hear me. Okay, that's great. Let's see. we're just trying to get the better network. Okay, I think I've been given a go ahead to continue. I think the network is better now. So yeah, we can continue. Okay, great. Welcome guys. Welcome everyone. And like I said, today we are going to be answering some questions. Also, okay, thank you, Bumi. So if you have any question, do well to go back to Google Classroom, drop the question under the comment section of that particular post we did earlier today. And if you don't mind, you can as well, get your book and pen and then take note of some important things that that will be very useful to you. So I'm going to start with some of those questions. Then once I'm done with the questions, I can go ahead and give you guys today's presentation. So basically it's revision. And we did some assessment yesterday, and I'm sure you guys actually saw that it was awesome, right? So it was not as difficult or intimidating as you probably was expecting. Although some people still didn't, answer most of the questions, which is actually why we're also doing these revisions today. So first of all, it's very important you go through those materials. Those materials that we post on the portal, they're actually very important. So it's important you don't you go through them before watching the video for the daily task. So it's actually very important you go through them, because they are going to teach you a lot of things that's going to help you in your design career and design decisions. So that notwithstanding, someone said, someone posted, I read an article on atomic design by Bradford. I'd like if you could do a quick rundown of that for me. Okay, this is Sage Arts. I don't know if Sage Arts is here, but basically, when we talk about the atomic principles by Bradford, this is basically a set of principles that can help in organizing your design, right? So he broke them down into 5, right? It's basically a methodology, and he broke them down into 5, right? And he said that if you can follow this methodology, your design becomes more manageable and easy to scale, right? And those 5 principles or methodology basically talks about starting from the barest minimum, the smallest part or the smallest unit of that product or that design, and that smallest unit is atom, right? Atoms are the smallest unit of any design. Just like in biology, they tell you atom is the smallest unit of life. Same goes here in Brad's atomic design methodology. He explained that atoms forms the basic unit of every design system. Now, when you talk about atoms, you are talking of things like colors, things like typography, things like spacing, right? So these are atoms, because every other thing you are going to build in your design are going to made up of these things, right? Any screen you are designing is going to have typography. Any screen you are designing is going to have color. Any screen you are designing is going to make use of spaces. So these are the atomic level elements of every design system, right? He also talks about things like labels, inputs, and all those other things. They form the atom of every website or every app. Now, once you leave atoms, you go to molecules. Now, molecules are basically building things that have more structure using those atoms, right? Just like we did over the weekend. So when you talk about molecules, you are now talking about search. You find out that if you want to design like a search form, it's going to contain an input field and a search button. So you can see that this input field, you pick it from the atom you already created, right? That input atom you already created. Then you pick the button atom you also created. When you join these two together, you create a search field. Basically, you're using these 2 atoms to create a search field. But a search field on its own doesn't really make much sense until you move to the organism level. At that organism level, You are probably building things like nav bar. You are building things like headers. You are building things like footers, right? And you find out that your header will now include something like a logo from your atoms, links from your atoms, and a search bar from your molecule. Okay? But you can also see that nav bar, footers, search bar on their own really also can't do much. Then we head over to the next one, which talks about templates. This is where you begin to provide a basic skeletal structure for your components or for your pages, right? You begin to build this template like a skeleton, right? When you bring up a page or a screen, you can now say, okay, here we are going to have pictures, we're going to have the nav bar. Now that is what we have under templates. And after templates, you can now use everything you've done so far to start building your pages. So basically, these are the 5 components of the atomic design methodology. You have the atoms, you have the molecules, the organisms, templates, and pages. So it's basically teaching you how to manage your design process. It's easier that way. So when you are doing everything from the atomic level to the molecular level, organism, template, and pages, you find out that your design becomes easy to manage. So basically, that's what we talked about the atomic design principle or methodology, right? So that's for that. Someone else asked, my question is on typography. How do we know which font type or weight to use for different part of screen? Example, when do you use body regular or body bold, and what size to use? Okay, can you guys still hear me? If you can hear me, drop some emoji or just comment, I can hear you, or we can hear you. Just comment something. Let me be sure everyone can hear me correctly. Okay, so the person asking about typography, I think this one is quite easy. Like I said, once you come to typography, there are some standards. As you're starting out, I encourage you to actually work with standards for now. Okay, Abimbola Omoni. Okay, great. I think you're the one that asked that question. Okay, great. Your mic is a bit low, really. Let me see. Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to maybe increase the mic. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm trying to see if I can, if there's a way to increase the mic. Let me. Okay, I think now the mic should be, the volume should be clearer. Okay. Okay, so as when it comes to fonts, let's take a look at that. So let's go to Figma now. Now, when it comes to fonts, I already told you guys there are some important things you need to understand with fonts. When it comes to fonts, we have what you call display. You have headings. These headings, they range from H1 to H6. Then you have body. Now, these are the 3. This body can also be what you call the paragraph. These are the 3 main types of typography you see on every app or every website. And there are some standards depending on if you are designing for mobile or for phones. Now, I'm going to start with the body. The body, which is very important, is one of the most important parts of any web page or any app. So basically, the body is the content you have, most of the content you have, or all the paragraph contents you have on your design. When it comes to body, you can use something around font sizes around 14 to 16. All right. Now, if you are also working on desktop, okay, you can even go as high as 18. These are the standards, okay? Standard for body copies. You can go between 14 to 16, or you can even increase it as high as 18 on a desktop, right? But on phones, on mobile apps, you see a lot of 14 to 16s, right? A lot of 14 to 16s. But no matter what, don't go below 12. Don't go below 12, okay? No matter what, for your body copies, don't go below 12. In fact, using 12 is in an extreme case where you really need to use it, because at the end of the day, you're also looking at things like accessibility when designing, okay? You are looking at things like accessibility. Is the font or is whatever you are typing still legible? Okay, so that's for that answer. For your body copies, that's the paragraph text in your design, you can use between 14 to 16. It now boils down to your preference, but when in doubt, use 14 to 16. If you are designing a mobile app, use 14 for things like your descriptions and the rest, okay? But when the paragraph is not that long, it's not that much, you can use 16. Now on this is that you begin to use 18 for your body copy. Now, in terms of the style, should it be bold? Should it be semi-bold? Should it be whatever style you want to use? For paragraphs, use the normal one, okay? Either use the regular one, or if it is depending on the legibility of the font now. Now, different fonts renders differently, okay? Now, for fonts, I will give you guys to use in this particular training, regular should be fine. Because fonts like Enter, Poppins, their regular works all the time. So for your body, you want to make sure you use that regular, okay? So your regular should work fine. But there are some fonts that might be a little bit thinner. So you might move one step upwards, right? Instead of regular, you might move to something like maybe semi-bold. But never use bold for your body copy. Don't use bold. Don't use bold for your body copy, okay? Now, when it comes to things like headings, now headings, the standard ones are H1 to H6. H1 being the most prominent thing on your page or the most important, especially in web design, okay? H1 to H6. Now, the sizes might differ depending on the scale at which you want to go. And for the scale, we talked about using 8-point grid system, right? We used 8-point grid system. Now, when it comes to scaling, there are different types of scale you can use. And we shared a typographic scale plugin last time, right? There are different types of scale you might want to use. There are the golden ratio scale, major third, minor third. All these things are just to guide you. But basically, one of the scale that works is just adding 8 to whatever number you have. So let's say you have 16 as your body copy, right? You might now start your header like your H6 by adding okay, your H6 can still be 16 or 14 and bold, but for your H1 on desktop, your H1, you should be looking somewhere between 48 to 56. 48 to 56. In fact, most time it's just 48. When you start going higher than 48 and you are looking at maybe 56 and the rest of them, you're actually looking at maybe a display typography type display. That's the one you see on hero sections, okay? But normally 46, 40, 44, 48 should be okay. 44, 48 should be okay for H1. So if you're using 48 for your H1, then you can use 40 for your H2, okay? Then you can use 32 for your H3, okay? You can see I'm just minusing 8. 32 for your H3, then you can use 24 for your H4, okay? Then you can use 18 for your H5, or 20 for your H5. Then for your H6, you can go somewhere around 14, okay? So basically, you want to grow that way. Now, in mobile apps, you might not really have H1 to H6. Instead, you might have something like header and subheader or subtitle. You might have title and subtitle. Then you can decide, okay, I want to use my titles to create main labels. Those ones you can go around 32. 32 is, don't make anything bigger than 32 on mobile, except there's need for it. The largest font you can have on your mobile should be 32 as you are just starting. John, can you hear me clearly now? Like I said, the largest font you should use on your mobile design should be 32. Now, if you are going 40, it might be. Now, let's take a look at it instead of just talking. Okay, let me get a frame here, and let's get this mobile iPhone 15. Okay, so let me type in create an account. Now, let's say this is an app we are trying to create. We are trying to create a sign up field, sign up screen. Now, let me go ahead and choose 32. And let me go ahead and make that bold since it's a heading. Now, for this, since I'm using 32, I can go ahead and make the line spacing 40. Sorry, 40, not 410. Okay, great. Now, you can see that this fits perfectly. Again, let me just leave it like this. You can see that this is okay, right? Let me duplicate this again. Let me duplicate this, and let's try make this one 40. Let's also come here and make this 48. Now, like I just told you, you can see the difference between these two. This 40 just seems to be a little bit larger, okay? The 40 seems to be a little bit large compared to the real estate of the screen. So, but a safe side to be on should always be 32 for your biggest font, right? Now, once you go from 32, you can, from 32, for your next heading, okay, or your next subtitle, you can move somewhere around 24. Are you getting it? 24. So when you have these two things, two screens like this, you see that you have a better, typography scale. But this size is just too much. Except there are times when you want to use big fonts. Okay, maybe it's part of the design, right? But for now, for your biggest element on mobile, you want to use 32, right? Followed by 24. Right? Remember, on your body copy, you are still using either 16 or 14, but most of the time you see people use 14 on mobile and 16 on websites. So these are the numbers you should work with, okay? I think I've answered that question. And to determine whether you should use bold or the regular fonts, you only use bold when you want to accentuate when a particular thing is important. For instance, when you are creating categories, headlines, let's assume you are creating a list of shops, right? When you want to write shops, okay, let's assume you are creating a list of shops. Now, where you have shop by category, this is definitely going to be what? Bold. Because under here, you now have the shops, right? So this should always be bold. So this should always be bold. You can see this example now. So let's assume you have something like shop by categories. This should always be bold. Now, if you want to indicate maybe shop by categories, or let's say you enter another section. Let's say on this section, you want to do something like, you are now specifying the categories. Let's say electronics. Okay, let's say electronics. And then you want to show like there are so number of items in these categories. So you pick your text tool and you wrote something like maybe 122 items found. Now, remember, for this, you can now go 14, okay? You can go 14. Now, for things like this, since you're already using bold here, you don't use bold for this. For this one, you can just come back to your normal regular, So you can just come back to your normal regular. So you now have electronics, right? That's the category. And then under it, you have 122 items found. So for these 122 items, you are not going to bold it. Don't use bold for it. Now, when you come down here, for these items, because these items, they are captions, you can now do, maybe you can now do something like maybe iPhone X, okay. Now, for this one, since it's the, the title or the caption of that product, you can also go ahead and make this one semi-bold, okay. Since it's the caption, you can make it semi-bold. So basically that's because this is a caption, right? Let's say Samsung S20. Let's put here Realme 10 Pro. Okay, now you can see back here I have also used semi-bold for these particular stuffs. So this is basically how you move from one typography style to another. So for the headings on mobile, when designing mobile, please do not exceed 32 for now. Later on, you can decide to go higher than 32, but for now that you're starting, just know that the highest font size you should use should be 32, okay? And these are used for high-level items, high-level titles, okay? Not just everywhere. And then you can go down to 24. Now, this 24 can now be used like maybe sometimes some people use 20 for this particular place right now, right? Some people use 20 or 24. Like you can decide to use 20 here as well. So it depends on your preference, but I've given you guys the way you should flow right now, okay? Don't go higher. On mobile phone, don't go lower than 12 points for your fonts. Don't go lower than 12 points. It's only in some cases that you even use size 10, right? In some cases you want to use size 10, but then 12 is the most recommended size of where you should be, okay? Now, instances where you use size 10 is maybe in all those feedback, all those edge case feedbacks, you could use maybe size 10, right? But when it comes to accessibility, size 10 is not actually recommended. You should stick to 12, 14, 16 for your body copy. And for the headlines, you could work with 16 bold, 18, 20. Then high level headings, you can work with 24 to 32. Just make sure the scale is improving by 8 for now. Just make sure the scale is improving by 8. So you have 8, 16, 24, 32, right? And in between, whatever number you want to use in between, it should either be through by 4. You should make sure it's divisible by 4 or by 8. So that's the best way to go ahead if you are just starting. There are sometimes you could use, odd numbers. There are sometimes that the design you are making could require odd numbers like 25. But no matter what you do not drag a font to give it size. Like maybe you write this thing and you feel like it's not okay and you just drag it anyhow using your eye to gauge. Sometimes it's going to give you a number with decimals, and then in programming your font sizes doesn't have decimal points. So no matter what you do, avoid decimal points when it comes to your fonts, okay? Then I'm going to take the next question, then we can go into today's revision so we can actually understand some other things. So someone says, how do we, this question is from Miss, Shina Yomi John. Shina Yomi John, can you hear me now? Because I'm about to take your question. Okay. From Shinayomi John. Shinayomi said, how do we get to know content to allocate on each screen? For instance, we've been following everything you've taught us, but how do we know the content for each frame when designing? Does it have a pattern or procedure? Definitely, Shinayomi, yes, there is a pattern that you can use to know exactly the content you want to put on those pages. And we've not actually gotten to that stage. You only get to know this when you do your research. So this is on the UX part. So when you've done your UX, you've done your research, and you know what your users want, right? During the ideation phase, these are times we now come up with some of the features. So it is the features that will now determine what to put on what screen, okay? So we'll be doing this one later on, not now. For now, the first part of this training is to get you acquainted with the tools we'll be using. And one of those tools is Figma. So everything we've been doing now, don't worry about trying to know the content you need to put, trying to understand why are we using so font size, or we are just trying to get used to Figma for now, right? We want to make sure that once we start the main design class, when I ask you, go to the layer panel, you should know exactly where layer panel is, right? If I should ask you, share your file with me on Figma, you should know exactly how to do that. When I ask you to create or to make a component out of an element, you should know how to do that on Figma. That is the goal of this first stream of this training. Is to get you acquainted with Figma. Like if I ask you to create a button, you should know how to create a button, right? So later on, we'll start taking a look at things like maybe how do you get this color? How do you choose a color? Although we've used an automated process to get our colors, while that works, you will still be taught how to actually properly create your own colors. Because most of the time, these automated plugins, most of the colors they will give you won't always work, right? They won't always work. Either they are too saturated, or they are undersaturated, or they are clashing with another color, right? But for now, we are using it to know exactly how Figma works. At least now you guys know about plugins, and you know that plugins enhances the functionality of Figma. So you've known plugins, you've known about Figma community, you know how to share your design, you know how to create components. This is the goal of this first sprint of this particular training, okay? So you will definitely learn about that later. I think this question from Lovett Cristiano, the font sizes we use are they standard? Yes, I think I just answered that. So I said you should just stick with them for your designs for now. That is what you mostly use or see in most apps. So stick with them, okay? Someone said, is there going to be certificate after the training? I think this has been answered. I'm not sure I want to repeat the answer of this question, so it doesn't take us back too much. Justice Obona, I would like to know if there are any accepted formulas or standard procedures that one needs to adopt in knowing the right and adequate padding and sizing of slides, button, and other elements when designing user interface, or are they left to the whims and caprices of the designer? Well, like I said, there are some standards that have been tested and they work all the time. So when in doubt, use them. And I advise every upcoming designers to start with them. Don't go and start doing guesswork. I don't know if Justice is here. So this should also be, everyone here should also take note of this. As you are starting now, don't go and be doing guess sizes. There are companies that have done lots of UX research to actually discover some of these things, the ones that work best. So what you can do as a beginner so that you can grow faster is to adopt some of these things. For instance, when it comes to button, I told you guys, when it comes to buttons, buttons can range from the height. Already the width of a button is determined by the content inside, okay? When it comes to button, the width is determined by the content inside. But for the height, you want to make sure you go from 44. Now, this should be the standard. Always make sure that the height of your button is 44. In some cases, for very small buttons, you want to go 40. In some cases, you want to go larger. Larger means somewhere around 56. Now, whatever you do, let's now call this one very big button. This is 60. That's for the height. Whatever you do, don't go above 60 and don't go below 40 when it comes to buttons. If not, they become unusable. If it is below 40, it becomes unusable because the tap area of the thumb and the fingers that people use in scrolling or typing is usually around 44. So if you even make it 40, means you are trying to, make the people be like, you should try and tap it. But anything lower than 40, no. And when it comes to making the button bigger, anything higher than 60, in fact, 60 won't work most of the times. But anything higher than 60 is no longer a button. I don't know what you are designing at that point, okay? So, but ideally, buttons should be 44. The height of every button should be 44, ideally 44. You can decide to do 40, 48, you can decide to do 56, but ideally, every button should be 44. Okay, so that's like some of these standards. So you said standard, yes, standards are important, so you should maintain them. Now, when it comes to padding, okay, now depending on what you are designing, if it's on this phone screen right now, let me get another screen. On a phone screen like this, if I want to design on this phone screen, the first thing I probably want to get is my margin, because I can't start by placing things on the edge here. You can't do this. You can't design and put things here, okay? The first thing you probably want to do is to get your margin, right? Now, on phones, a lot of people use 24 and 32. So let me draw a box here. Let me make this box 24 for margin, okay? And let me do Control D and make this 32. Let me make this 32. Now, these are the two numbers you see a lot of people use. Let me go ahead and give it a color there. So these are the two numbers you see a lot of people use for the margin. So if you are starting your design, just make sure you use one of these. But most times, you use 32. 32 is better. Because the reason why 32 is better is some of the screen guards that people buy or they are producing right now, they have this extra black border around them. So when you fix it on your phone or on the phone, you notice that that black border will even, take some space off the screen. So usually if you use 32, you are playing it very safe. But whatever you do, don't go below 24 for your margin. Now, when you use 32, that means your content will start from here, okay? When you start placing your content, they will start from here and end here. So this is your margin. This is your margin. Now, on phones, when you are trying to design a card on phone, okay? Remember, this is your margin, okay? This is your margin right here. When you are trying to design a card on phone, let's say you have a picture, okay? You have a picture, you have like a content, a title there. Then you have like a button. Let me bring in a button. Let me just use this as a hypothetical button. Let me make it very rounded so that it looks like a button. Now, if I'm to do this, if you went through that article on principles of design, you found out about something called common region, right? You group things according to their relationship. Now, since this, let me put iPhone 12 Pro Max. Now, since this, okay, I didn't write the iPhone well. Now, since this caption here is the name of the image here, that means this is related to this. That means these two, I'm going to group them closer than this button that says buy now. Let me bring this one to front. Let's call this one add to cart. Okay. Now I'm just doing a quick design right here. Okay. Now what I'm saying is this. Since this is the name of whatever this picture is, and this is the button here, this is closer to this. So the first thing you want to group is this and this. And this and this, the spacing between them will be smaller than the spacing you are going to give between that group and this button. So if I should select this now and select this, I can do Shift A. Now, since we are using the 8-point grid, remember we are moving 8, 16, 24 like that, right? So if you decide to use 4-point grid, that means you are moving 4, 8, 12, 16, just like that, depending on what you are using. But for now, we are using 8-point grid. What we can do is for these two, we can just come here and make the spacing between them 8. Now, making this spacing between them 8 is because they are related. So what I can now do is to select these ones now, this group, and select it with this group and do Shift A. For the space between now, since this is another group entirely, what I can do now is to go ahead and do 24 right here, right? If I do 8 times 3, I can decide to go times 2 or times 3. If I decide to go times 2 of whatever I used here, that should make it 16. Okay? Now, if I decide to go times 3, that should make it 24. So you can decide to go times 2 or times 3. It depends on your preference, but there is a rule. Times 2, times 3, times 4. Just make sure you are progressing like that, depending on the smallest one you are using. Now, as for padding, when it comes to cards like this, 16 is okay for the padding. So if I should come here now and put in 16, and then put in 16 here, let me just give it a weird color so that you can see what's going on. Okay, let me just give it this. Okay, so let me make all these things fill container so that you can actually see them. Fill container, fill container. Okay, same thing here. We want to make this fill container. That text there, we want to increase that text. Okay, sorry, I didn't use an auto frame for it, I think. So basically your padding, when it comes to cards on mobile like this, you want to make your padding 16. Don't make it bigger than 16, right? Some people can actually, you can use 32, but 32 becomes a little bit much. But if you make it 16, that is fine. When you make 16, you can now decide to add maybe, now if you use a corner radius of 8, the inside ones, if they have corner radius, okay. So 16 for the padding is very, very okay. Okay. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Okay, I think we're back. The network was a little bit, went off for a while there, but we're back. Yeah, we're back. So yeah, so that's the standard you should use. There are standards, and most of the designs we've been doing, we've been trying to make sure we use the standards so that if you use the same settings to create your own design, they will come out nice. Okay, but in a later class, we are going to take a look at this sizing and how to come about them, right? Okay, great. So that's Genius Soft. Okay. Okay, so that's the last question we have on the Google class. If you still have question, just go back in there now and drop them so we take a look at them and for better clarification. For today, we are going to take a look at some of these things here. Meanwhile, before we continue, let me just write something for some people. The meaning of UIUX, okay? UI is user interface, okay? UX is user experience. Now, a lot of you, I don't know, maybe it's because people are used to shorthand, but quite a lot of you selected user experience. I don't know why. Genius Soft, you asked a question. I'm not sure I saw your question. Genius Soft, are you sure you left it under that post? Because I really can't see that question there. Let me see. I really didn't see that question. Okay. So like I was saying, UI UX, UI means user interface. User interface. So when you hear UI designer, that means user interface designer. While UX is user experience designer, not user X. Okay? Not X. It is not the normal spelling of experience, not this one. Okay? Not this one. So I don't know why some of you selected this one as UX. And also, the function of a user experience designer is to most time make the product more usable and more satisfying for the customer. It's not the business of the UX designer to make the product more beautiful. When it comes to aesthetics, that is left for the user interface designer. So you guys should make sure you take note of these two things. They are very different, okay? John, Shinayomi John, I think I already answered your question. Yes, Shinayomi John, I answered your question. If you were not here when I was answering it, you can replay this video back later. You can see, because of your question, I did all this illustration to show what type of fonts, how to scale your typography. Okay, you were the one that asked how do we know what to allocate. Yes, go and rewatch this video. I already answered that. We are not doing that for now. We'll do that when we get to the UX part of this training. Once we get to UX, we'll answer all those things. Okay? So let's move on. So this is what we want to take a look at today. So we've done all these things, but I'm just coming to show you guys how to do it for those that still don't get it. Okay? For those that still don't get it. So let's take a look at the first one, which is the gradient fill. Okay? The gradient fill. Now, how do you add gradient fill? Now, if I should draw a box here, if I should go ahead and draw a box, so you know that the fill you've been using, when you come to fill, you have different types of fill. The first one here is the solid fill. Now, solid fill is basically one color, right? One color, solid fill. And if it's usually, this is the default fill, okay? So once you're on solid fill, what you want to do is to understand how this place works, right? So here you can choose, the saturation level, right? If you move, you can choose the saturation value and the brightness value as well. Now, Here, you choose the hue value. That's the color. You have color, you have brightness, and you have saturation. So when you move from left to right, you are basically saturating and desaturating, saturating and desaturating, okay? Now, when you move up and down, you are basically increasing the brightness and reducing the brightness. So these are the things you should know about this. If you move up or down, you are increasing or reducing the brightness. But when you move left and right, you are saturating or desaturating the color. And then for the colors, whatever you use, you can come here and change the color. Here is the hue value. You can choose the hue value right here. Okay? Okay. Genusoft, I've seen your question now. Okay, great. So I'll take a look at it and provide answer to that. Now, if you come in here, you can choose colors. So any color you decide to choose here, you can choose the color right here. The first thing you want to do is to choose your color first. Now, if you choose your color, you can decide if you want to desaturate that color or increase that color, okay? Or do you want to make it brighter or you want to make it darker? These are the two ways you move, up and down. Remember, up and down is brightness, up and down. Meanwhile, left and right is saturation. And here, you choose the color of whatever you want right here. There will still be a color class. I'm just showing you how color works in Figma. This is not a color class. So in the color class, that's what we'll talk about, color psychology and the rest, okay? For now, I'm just showing you how Figma works. The aim of this particular section of this training is to make you people competent enough when it comes to Figma, so that when you start getting tasks that says create this, you know where to go to on Figma. You won't be looking for it, okay? Now, this particular one at the lower part is the transparency or opacity level. So you can make this a little bit transparent or opacity, okay? So that you can see through it or let it interact with the layer under it. So that's what this one is used for. And you can actually copy and paste color hex codes right here. And also you can use this to adjust opacity. So you can see if I make it 50 right now, this slider comes to 50. So if I take it back to 100, it shows 100 right there. Now this is the color we've been using so far, the type of color we've been using so far. It's called solid color, okay? Now, if you want to give 2 or more colors, you move to the next one, which is gradient. Now, in reality, everything in life is kind of gradient. There is no object in life that is directly one color, right? No object is one color. A lot of objects you see, because light bounces, reflects and bounces, okay? So you always see a mixture. So anytime you want to create different color stops, then you want to move to the next one, which is gradient. Now, under these gradients, you can see 2 stops here, color 1 and color 2. Now, right now, you can see the color 1 there. You can choose the color and repeat everything I've said earlier. If I click on this color 2, you see something interesting. You can see that I can choose a color here. So let me just choose a weird color that doesn't match so you can see what's going on. But you can't see it fully on this shape. So that's because right now it's on 0. But if I select it and I go and make it 100, now you can clearly see this. And please don't do this kind of gradients. I'm just doing it to, to give us an example of how gradient works. But don't do this. I'll show you how to do this better also when we get to color, okay? Now, this particular section now, this gradient, you can actually double click to add more stops. You just click, you add more stops. Now, if I click this one, I can go ahead and say, okay, I want this red. If I click this one, I can go ahead and say, I want this blue. Now you can see, you can now add multiple colors, but please don't do this type of color, okay? I'm just over-exaggerating it to show you that you can add different color stops in when you're on gradient fill. Now you can arrange it anyhow you want, okay? You can arrange this thing anyhow you want. So basically, that's how gradient fill works. You can add multiple steps and multiple colors. Now, if you notice, they are moving from left to right in a linear form. okay, in a linear form. That's because right here we have it as linear. You can even move this here. From here, you can drag this and move it to this point or any point you want. You can even close them up together like this, okay? You can move these things around. That's basically what I'm trying to show you. That's the angle. You can move the rotation. You can move that's the rotation point. You can move it around. But something else that is interesting here is for you to know that what we are using now is the linear type. If you click here, if you click here, you see that Genius, please don't do this type of gradient. Now, if you click here, you see that aside linear, we have radial, angular, and diamond. Now you can use these ones to create different types of effects. But trust me, at this stage, leave these ones, let them leave you. Lead them, let them leave you, okay? But if you want it radial, you can come here and you can see radial. Once you choose radial now, you can see it gives you this circular motion, right? And if you come here and choose angular, it gives you this angular motion. Same way, if you come in here and choose diamond, you get this kind of diamond shape, okay? But please and please and please again, I'm showing you this just for knowledge purposes. Don't come here today. Don't come here tomorrow. Don't come here. In fact, throughout your first 6 months as a designer, don't come here. The linear will be enough. The linear will be enough, okay? Once you've gotten hold of some certain basic skills in design, you can now come in here. Except maybe you are a graphic designer and you've been using tools like Illustrator, CorelDRAW, and the rest, and you already know how to really use them and you already know their use cases. Definitely, that's why I'm also showing you this, so you can actually repeat the same thing you've been doing in Illustrator. You can actually get the same thing here. But if you are just starting your design career, please don't come in here. And also, let me go back to solid. Now, how do you actually do gradient? Although we have another class on color, but if you really want to do gradient, please don't mix colors that are too opposite together. They don't work. They are not realistic, okay? They might be too sharp. Sometimes, let me come in here. Let me just give this blue, for instance, okay? Or let's go with blue, for instance. Now, let me select the second one. Sometimes you might want to do something like this, okay? Yes, sometimes you might want to yeah, Ngozi, I know the warning is loud. Please, let's maintain it, okay? Now, sometimes you might want to do something like this. That's using these two colors that are very opposite. Sometimes there are some design style, there is a design pattern where you use something like this, okay? But for now, don't do this. Instead, what you want to do for your gradient is to just select that same primary color, okay? But maybe just reduce the brightness small, okay? You can see this is what you want to do going forward. This is how your gradient should be for now, please. What else you can do here to make it look more realistic? Instead of making it this direct linear, you can make it diagonal. You can bring it here, you can put this one right here, and then push this one right here. Now, always make sure that the darker part is at the lower side, while the bright side is at the upper side. Now, you might also be tempted to do something like this, to use maybe another shade of blue, okay? You might also be tempted to do something like this. While it's nice in your eyes and the rest, the issue is you might just do it wrongly, and you might do it in the wrong use case. So when it comes to subtle gradients, just maintain what I just showed you now, okay? You can always rewatch this video to see how we did it. We also did this when we designed buttons, okay? So you want to have your solid color, and then you want to just add a darker shade of that solid color. So this is how you should do your gradient. But I've shown you gradient. After gradient, the next thing you have there is image. Image, you can try this one on your own. I think there was an article on how to use image in Figma and was shared. You can do image on your own. You can go ahead and select image and use an image for the background. We'll also take a look at how to use images as background in a later class this week. Okay, then video. You can also use video, but video will only be available for you if you are on the Figma Pro plan or the education plan. So that's when video can work. So yes, you can actually use video for your background. So that is it for colors. So this is how you create, you add colors on Figma. Like I said, this is not a color class. We'll have a color class later, but this is just basically how to add colors in Figma. The next thing we want to take a look at now is stroke. Okay, let me bring in a frame here. Let me draw a frame, and let's call this, okay, let's bring this in here. Let me make it black. Now let's take a look at strokes. To add a stroke, let me do Ctrl D. Let me make this 44 so that it makes more sense. Oh. Okay, I will relate that to Google. Okay. Okay. Now, if you had this image, you would have shared it on Telegram or WhatsApp. So we'll look at it before the live starts. Now, let's take a look at how to add stroke. To add stroke to your design, all you need to do is to come down here where you have stroke. Okay? Then you click on this plus sign. Once you click on this plus sign, it will give you these properties. The first one is the color of the stroke. The second one here is the opacity of the stroke. This is to hide or view the stroke, and this minus is to remove the stroke. Now, as for the properties, right, you have the type of stroke. Is it going to be inside or outside? Now, 80% of the time, you want to use inside. It is only in some cases where you maybe want to make the stroke cut out, right? That's when you use outside. But like I told you guys, the reason why most people don't like using outside stroke is because when you use outside stroke, it kind of adds to the height of that particular element visually, okay? Visually. So this is inside stroke. We have outside, which moves it basically outside the box. Now let me zoom in. Now you can see where this box starts, okay? Let me choose inside, so you see what happens. Inside. The stroke is now inside, not here. I'm not sure I can draw something that tiny. Okay. Okay. Let me just push this here. Oops. Let me push this here. Now let me select this. Let me set this stroke outside. You can see when I set it outside, you can see it's now on the same line with this, which means visually the height of this element increased, although we still have 44 here, but visually it increased. That is why most people don't want to use it, because sometimes it begins to add unnecessary space you didn't plan for. Okay? So what you want to do instead is to use your inside. You can see inside, it does not visually add to the height of this element. So you want to use inside most of the time. Please always use inside. Use inside. Okay, use inside for now. Use inside, I beg. Once you want to add your stroke, use inside. Now, once you've gotten you've done the inside, the next thing you want to talk about is the width. Now, the width, you can use this to create effect or anything you want, but please, for now, maintain 1 or 2. In fact, 2 are in cases where you really need to show that this has an outline, but maintain 1 or 2. Don't do 5. Don't do 10. Don't do 20. If your mind is telling you to do 20, you might as well draw a small rectangle with height of 20. Okay? But aside that, for now, please do 1 or 2. We are begging you, on behalf of everyone at Designgate, as you are starting, we are begging you, 1 or 2 is enough for your stroke, except you are trying to create an effect. But leave effect now. Let effect leave you for now. As time goes on, you will learn how to do effect. But as you are starting now, leave effect so you don't become an after effect of your own problem. Let's continue. Okay, so that's for that particular one. Then the next section here is choosing the strokes per side. So right now, if I scroll backwards, you can see that this stroke is on all sides. It's on all sides, okay? Now, if I don't want it to be on all sides, I can just select this, and I can come in here. I can come in here, and you can see I have all, and I have top, bottom, left, or right. So if I want it only on the bottom part, I can just click on bottom. Now you can see it is only on this bottom part, okay? If I want it to be on the top part, I'll just click top. Okay. Yes, if you notice, that button was quite big. Remember I told you guys something about that particular button. Okay. And even on that slide, I told you guys we are over exaggerating things just so that you people can see how things work. Okay. But for now, you when you want to do your own, you won't be doing sliders right now. Okay. Just normal buttons and things like this. So let's assume you want this on the top and bottom only. You find out that if I come here and click bottom, it changes. It does not apply to two of them. So if you want to do that, you want to click on custom. Now once you have custom, you can come here and then select, okay, maybe I now want that same two here. Okay, so you can see we now have it on the left and the bottom. Okay, so that's basically how, let's go back and make it all. That's basically everything you want to know about strokes. When it comes to color, you also have the same option when it comes to color. Welcome, Mr. Caleb, our star boy. When it comes to color for the stroke, you can also, send in different colors. You can also use different colors, just like you can use solid, you can use gradients, and yes, Figma included picture for stroke, but just because Figma included picture for the stroke fill, they didn't ask you to use it. Don't use it. Don't use picture for your stroke fill. Don't use video for your stroke fill. I don't know the kind of effect you want to create that you would want to make you at this stage. Okay, so leave them for now. Right now, you probably want to use the gradients or the solid for your fills. Now, another thing I've not been mentioning is that Figma allows you to add multiple layers of colors. Okay, so if I should come back here on fill, you can see this plus sign, right? I can actually use it I can click on this plus sign and basically add another color on top of it. If I should use red now, you can see it has added a tint of red. But if I come here and make this 100%, you can see it's full on 100%. You can't even see the color under again, except I come in here and move this particular color, drag it up, then I'll see this one. If I drag it back down, I'll see this one. But the essence of these multiple colors is maybe when you want to create some kind of dynamic colors for your components, or you want to add tints or overlays to your color. Please don't make it 100%. They are usually around 25%. That's for your overlay and tint. Okay, I think we've covered the John, you want to try it? Okay, that brings us to buttons. Okay, we're almost done with today's live session. So if you have questions, you can start dropping them under that Google that Google Sheets, that Google Classroom post, okay? Once I do finish button right now, I'll go ahead and answer one question from there. For buttons, we cannot overemphasize about buttons. Buttons are the primary element that drive action on any app. So if you have sign up, okay, and you want to create a button for sign up, what you probably want to do is to select this sign up, and this Figma's way of achieving this, okay? Our font is obviously not going to be 72 because we are not designing for mainframe computers. Right now, we are just designing for mobile phone, desktop, and tablets, okay? So there is no call. There's no reason to use 72 as your font size for this button. Except it's for elephants. You can use for 72 since it's elephant that is using the device so that they can tap it. Now, let's go ahead and use our normal font size, which is 16, okay? And I'm just going to make this, instead of regular, because it's a font, it's a button, I might go with semi-bold, so it's just a little bit different from the rest. Now, let me zoom in. Now, you can see if I put 16 here and put in 24 here, the height right now is currently 24, which is not ideal for a button. So what do I do to convert this to a button? I add a frame to it. So I do Shift A to add my frame, okay? So once I add my frame, you can see automatically, if I leave it at 10, 10, 10, it has given me the ideal 44. But remember, 10 is not part of our spacing system. So I want to come here and maybe do something like 16, okay? And then come in here and do something like maybe 8. Okay, let me color it. Let me give it a color. I think that blue is always handy. That's why I use it a lot. Okay, let me select this now and give it color white. Okay, now once I select this, you can see it is giving me the small size of button, which is 40. And I said, no matter what you do, don't go below 40. But for this particular one, we want to make sure the height here is 44. 44. Perfect. So now we have a good button that can serve us. We can just come in here and add maybe 8 or 4. Now, for buttons, you can use 8, 4, 16. Anything higher than 8, 4, 16, just make it 100. Don't waste your time. If you want anything higher than 8, 4, or 16, okay, this is 8, right? Now, this is 16. Now, anything higher than this, please just make it 100 so that we know it's a rounded. You can see this one is almost looking like a square, right? So instead of 8, now this is 8, and here you have 4. So you have 4 here, 8 here, 16 here, which because of the size, because of the width, although if we should increase this, it looks a little bit better. But because of the width we are currently, the height which we are currently using now, it's almost looking like a square. But anything, yeah, the blues are always calm, okay? That's why a lot of apps use blue. Now, anything higher than 16, please use 100. Let's know that you want a rounded rectangle. Don't come and give us 33. Okay? Don't do that. So for your buttons, once you've done this, make sure the height is set to 44. This should be your main button. If you now want to go small button, you do 40. That means you come in here. Okay? This is our 44. You can now come in here and do 40. Okay? You can now come in here and do 40. This is small button. What you cannot do is to come in here and type 32. Don't do this for now. Don't do this for now. Later, because we want you to be able to get job after this training. If you are doing this type of button, even if they take you to somewhere for free internship, they will not accept you. When they see this type of tiny buttons here on your design, they will not accept. Even if it is free, if they say you should work with them free 10 years, they will not accept. Even if you came recommended by Tinubu, they will not accept, because your buttons are going to drive away customers and people from using the app. For now, please maintain 44. And then, like I said, large buttons, you can go 56. 56. Large buttons, you can go 56. Okay? That is on the height. For large buttons, on the height, you can go 56. That is it. That is it. Don't go higher. I know you want to go higher. I know you are saying, I'm going higher. Yes, I am. Please, don't go 72. Except you are designing for Vimeo. Please, don't go 72. Don't do 72 for now. You can do it later. After you are done with this bootcamp, right, that is still attached to Designgate, and you've set up your portfolio with our recommendations, right? After that, if you want to do 120, but for now, please maintain this so that you can be desirable to employers and even to yourself, okay? So don't do this. Don't do this, don't do this. So this is standards for buttons. Don't go lower than 40 for your small buttons for now. Ideally, you want to maintain 44, 48. Ideally, 44, 48 for your standard buttons. For your large buttons, you want to go 56, but don't go higher than 56. If you even go 60, we will look at you somehow. But anything higher than 60, deliverance. You might need deliverance. So that's for buttons. Okay, so I'm just going to pause a little bit here and take the question from, I think someone asked the question. Let me take that question and I'll come back to this. So if you have question, now is a good time to type it in. Now someone said the 56 height button is still for mobile. If it is for mobile, you can use 56, but the issue now is where will that button be when you are using 56, okay? So that's why it's good to use 44. If you use 56, maybe it's for the splash screen. For the splash screen, you can use 56. But when you now have, now imagine this is what you have. This is the real estate, right? Now imagine this is the real estate you have. Imagine this is the real estate you have to design. Already you know from the top, the status bar and the nav bar would have taken about 84, right? The status bar and the nav bar would have taken this part. Then, no, I think it's about 100. The status bar and the nav bar would have taken this. Then your safe area and your tab bar would have taken this other one. Okay? Would have taken this other one. Now, this is the space. This white space is where you have real estate to design. If you now make a button, 56, I just want to show you something. If you now make a button, 56, the specifications are both for mobile and for both mobile and web, but mostly mobile, but mobile and web. On web, also maintain around that kind 44, 56. Don't go higher. It's not a navigation menu. Now, if you use 56 for button here, like I say, if it is splash screen, it might work. But if it is the normal screen where you have other content, it might just chop a little bit more space. So you want to maintain 44, 48, okay? 44, 48. Caleb wants to use 104. Okay. Let me take that question by Genius Soft. Let me take that question. This question is long. Okay. Instructor on the lesson creating button told us that before going ahead to create a button, we must first design and input all the states of the button and all that. But my question is, if you are given a new project, how would you know all these design states of your button? Exactly. Now, this first question is the reason why everything we've been teaching you, like some of these main components, okay? Some of these main components that we've been teaching you. We don't want you to be designers that guess things, okay? We want you to do things right. We don't want you to finish this bootcamp and start guessing, or you are still oblivious of some certain design standards. Every important component that we've been designing so far, things like the form input field, things like the buttons, things like cards, they have been supporting notes so that when you read it, you actually understand the whole idea about that component. When it comes to buttons, for instance, we told you buttons have types. Buttons have types and they have states. It is everywhere. You are not inventing your own button any day that will not have these things. Every button, every clickable button have different types and different states. And we said when it comes to type, you can come to things like field type, outline buttons, okay, field button, outline buttons, and things like that. And when it comes to sizes, you can have small, normal, large, extra large. And when it now comes down to states, these states, while the type and the size might vary based on your design, the states cannot vary. Yes, the nav bar, start bar, those ones have specific sizes. So unless you want to go and manufacture your own phone, they have specific sizes you must adhere to. Don't go and put your design inside that iPhone notch. You see iPhone notch bar? Any design you put that is where iPhone notch is, they will not see it though. Because Apple will not, because of you, and remove their notch because you put one color there. So that's why you have to respect those sizes. And I gave us the standard size. We've been using the standard size all this while. If you take a look at those guides we created, okay, they are the standard sizes. Some device will have other standard sizes, but we've been dealing with iPhone, okay? Now, if when it comes to button, the states are the same. You have the active states, you have the hover states, you have the enabled states, and you have disabled states or inactive states. You see these four states, they are there. They are there because a button can just be here. Like now, this button is indicating that it is active. Now, if I hover on it, that is the hover state. If you want, in some buttons, they will just change small color. Okay? Now, if you now click on it, that is pressed. In some cases, when you now click on it, it will take you to that page. When it takes you to that page, in order for it to look different from others, it will display what you called enabled state. That means it is telling you this is where you are currently. Some people change the color. And now there are buttons that might not be clickable until you trigger an action. For instance, most of the time when you are going through terms and conditions, you find out that if you have not clicked on I agree, the continue button will be in a state called inactive. They are usually grayed out, okay? But once you click on I accept, which we know you did not read those things, but you clicked on I accept, it becomes active. So these four states, you must do them in a button. If you want, say you just start learning design today, except you didn't start with Designgate, you should know these states. Once they say design something for us and you are preparing your design, you must have these states, okay? The active states, enabled states, hover states, and inactive states. Very important. Maybe if you might have another, but these four states, very important. You must have them. Second question. Okay, he said, here is my second question. We talked about responsive and adaptive design in our lessons. Please, I want to ask, which amongst the two would be recommended to designers to use? Or are we at no, this one you are not at liberty to do anything, because the two of them are not the same thing. I told you guys last time, responsive design and adaptive design is not the same thing. Responsive design basically works with what we call media queries, CSS media queries, to determine screen sizes. So based on the screen size, it gives you a particular design. Mostly in responsive design, you are just adjusting the entire design based on screen sizes. Miss Chiebuka, yes, I don't catch you. Now, based on screen sizes, okay, you adjust your design. So if there are things in 3 columns, based on screen sizes, now let me give you a practical example of what Figma provided for us. Now, let me pick a desktop here. Let me pick desktop right here. Now, let me pick desktop, and I want to use 12 columns. I want to use 12 columns. Now, let me draw a box. Let me draw 4 boxes, okay? 4 boxes. Let me draw 3 boxes, each representing 4 columns. So, Control D and Control D. Okay, let me select these 3 now. Shift A, and let me make them few container. Okay, let me make them few container. And space between, let me go ahead and make that, let's say 16. Now, oh, I used 16. Now, here's the deal. Let me explain responsive design to you. This is desktop. On responsive design, you see the way these things are now, okay? The way these things are. Let me also convert this to auto frame here. Let me make this few container. Now, what responsive design is simply saying is, if this is to appear on tablets, if you still have these 3 content in this row, they might not come out nice. Instead, what you want to do is to what? Make it flow. Okay? You want to make responsive design helps you make it flow. That means once you come to, set this change to feel. Oh. Okay. Yeah, it's supposed to be fixed for the flow to work. Yeah. I'm trying to, okay. Now, okay. Okay. So we are good to go now. Okay. Now, what responsive design is basically saying is, here now, this part, okay, should be mobile. So when you have 3 columns on websites, if someone should visit using mobile, it will render this design like this. You can see instead of 3 column, right, you are now having 2, and then 1 have gone under. But you now target again and say, if the person should be visiting on phone, render them this way. Okay? Let me take this thing to the center. Okay, sorry, let me bring this. So this is what responsive design is all about. If I open it on mobile, those 3 containers, stack them on top of each other. When I open it on tablets, it should be this way, but when the person opens it on web, it should show the full column. That is responsive design. Meanwhile, adaptive design is targeting device type, not device size. Is targeting device type. There are some features that might not work well on a particular device. So designers use a technique known as adaptive design to make sure their product adapts based on the person's device. Just like right now, if you want, say you don't want to use Technophone and you know your budget is 110,000, you say you will never use Technophone. You decide to use this 110,000, or you decide to use that money to go and buy iPhone 6 in 2023. There are some websites you go to right now, some certain things will not function, right? So continue enjoying your iPhone 6 because you don't want to use Techno and your budget is not much. Instead of you to use it and buy Techno of 2023 that can render some of these things, you say, Mbano, you want iPhone 6. Okay, continue. So that is adaptive design. In fact, in programming as well, they can as well use adaptive design to even locate your country and show you content based on your country or your location. So these are different things. They are not the same. Adaptive and responsive, they are not the same. But every designer should know about responsive design first, especially when it comes to web apps. When it comes to web apps, you want to focus on responsive designs, okay? And after that, you can start looking at adaptive designs. It's more of a requirement issue than a design issue. So some people prefer to buy iPhone 6 than to use Techno. They tell you they can never use Techno. Okay. Your next question is, please, I also want to find out, is there a particular pattern as recommended by instructor to arrange our UI screen? For example, in the project we are building, I saw that our method placed a splash screen first. But yes, there is a pattern. And you see the way we've been arranging it. That's the way we want to arrange it. You don't want to confuse anybody, except they are village people, and we are not your village people. So you don't want to confuse anybody. By the time we are done, you get the patterns, okay? There is a way you arrange, and you start arranging things in sections, right? You start arranging things in sections so everything works out fine. Yes, you don't want to confuse people. So Rachel asked, why do you always create Boolean properties, and how do you know when to create all these properties and style? Good question, Rachel. I hope you are here, Rachel. Now, this is a Figma feature. It's not an industry-wide feature. It's a Figma feature that is just making life easy. So before all these Boolean properties came out, what most people do is, in case you want to have buttons and all these things, you have to create them individually. And anytime you want to edit them, you have to go in manually and start hiding things, okay? And start hiding and revealing things. So Figma was like, now imagine before now, if I want to add this button, let me just put this here. Okay, before now, let's assume I have this as a component, and then maybe the next button I wanted to use is not supposed to have this icon. But because it's a button component, it must have that icon. So before now, what we used to do is to come inside this frame, open up this frame, and then hide the eye icon. Yay, we have achieved it. But now, there are components. There is something called nested components. There are components you build with components that are components of another component. Okay? Now, that layer of complexity becomes a big problem when you want to start entering the layer panel and look, especially if you are even fond of not naming layers. It becomes an issue. So what Figma did with Boolean properties is just to make your work easier. It does not increase your design skill or decrease your design skill, okay? It's just to help you make things easier. So what Figma did instead of you always coming here to start searching for these things to do, all you need to do is to create a Boolean property. Yes, Akimbo, everything is getting easier now. That's why this bootcamp, we tailored the curriculum to match the way things are done now, okay? Although we didn't introduce you guys to Figma variables, most companies are still scratching their head over Figma variables because they prefer to implement their variables on their developed design system and not worrying about it on Figma, because at the end of the day, the real design system is the one that programmers have coded, not your Figma file for designers. So most companies right now, they are still working with the variable in the development platform, not necessarily on Figma. Right now, designers that are using Figma variables just want to show up for now. But next 2 years, it won't be the same. Oh. Next 2 years, the adoption would have been viral. But as you are starting now, please, don't go and start reading up on Figma variables. Leave it so it will leave you alone. Get good at how to design first. Okay? Once you are good on how to design, you can switch, you can learn Figma variables within 30 minutes. Okay, so now what Figma did was now to provide us a switch where we can turn this arrow on and off using what? Boolean properties. That's just that. That's just the answer to that, Miss Rachel. I hope that answer. I hope you are here. Francis David again. Another question in line with Rachel's question about Boolean properties. I noticed that my Figma value for Boolean is either true or false, but yours was user input. Mine was not user input. Now, you should note this. If you have a shape and you convert it to a component, you will have one which is layer on the layer property, which is the where you create the button, the toggle Boolean property. But if it is a text, okay, if it is a text like this sign up now, if I convert it, let me just do that so you guys can see. Now, let me add icon. Okay, let me do this. Now, what we have here, let me Control D. Now we have, okay, I think I'll use this style and just go to components. Now we have this here. Remember, we have three things here. We have, sorry, two things. Aside the container holding the button, we have the label, that's the text, and we have this icon, okay? Now, we can just say we have two elements here, two elements, the icon and the text. Now, if I should go ahead and convert this to a component, now we can toggle on and off two things, either this or this. So if I should select this icon right here, you can see that this icon, it's only the layer property that is active now. And it's only the layer property that have this Boolean property, creates Boolean property, because this is a shape. So it's only going to handle this layer. So from here, I can now select arrow or icon left. Sorry, icon right. Okay, and I'll say create property. Now, if I go in and drag out this asset right here, okay, if I drag in this asset, I have this on and off. Remember, this on and off is not a big deal. It's just like going back to your layer panel to off that eye, to off the visibility of that eye. It's not a design skill, okay? It's just Figma know-how. Now, the second thing I can also do is to provide toggle for this text. But whenever it comes to text, Figma gives you two options. Whenever it comes to text alone, Figma gives you two options. And that option is the layer option, which you still use. Remember, the layer allows you to turn these things on and off. So you can click here and say create property, and you can say label. So now if I come here, I have my label. If I don't want the label, I turn it on. If I want it, I turn it back on. I can turn it off and turn it back on, okay? But with text, you have two other options, because right now, the only way for me to edit this text, or this particular component text, is to double click inside. I'll double click inside and type maybe register. Now, Figma again, in their own magnanimity and trying to be a good guy that wants to make sure every designer use Figma to design, even though there are other platforms you can use for designing. They even give us free students this thing to use and learn. Now, Figma on their own was like, wait, what if these things is their nested components? It becomes very difficult to edit this text. Why not create an easy way for people to, edit this text using that same idea? So for text only, not shapes. Aside this layer property here, if you come to the text area, you see this text area, you are also going to get this property here, text property, right? So if you click here, you are going to see create text property. So that is why you have two for text. You have create text property. I can now click on it and I can now call it whatever, label. I can call it label. Enter it. Now I have this. So if I click here, instead of me double clicking to type in register, I can just come in here and say sign up. If I hit enter, it will automatically change it for me. So this is nice. It's just a cool thing Figma did for designers. It does not add to your design skill. So that's for that. So, and this is only for text. You only see this text property for text elements in a component. Every other thing, shapes, will have only layer property, right? Okay, another thing you might have is instance swap, but that's the story for another day. So when Ngozi Onyema, when designing a website, do we use the same size of buttons everywhere, or we change the size according to specification? Now, the way people are throwing specification around nowadays, when designing a website, your buttons should be uniform. Buttons should be uniform. The only things that might change in your button might be the button type. That is it primary, secondary, or accents, something like that, okay? Is it primary button, secondary button, right? So that's what you should focus more on. But they should be the same because you want to maintain consistency. You want to maintain consistency, okay? You want to maintain consistency. So it should be the same size. It should be the same size. But there might be different type, just like when we had button groups. Button group, when we say when you have two buttons together, they can't be the same type. You can't use two primary buttons like this. You can't use two primary buttons like this. So please, you can't use two primary buttons like this. When you have two primary buttons like this, you might decide to now make one the secondary button. Okay, the secondary button. Let me select. Okay. So when you have two buttons like this, you might decide to make one. One is the main one. No wonder. I was using the same thing. So when you have two buttons like this, you might want to make one the secondary color. I think you guys had a question like this under the visual part. There was a question like this. Some of you failed it. It was sad. Some of you failed it. Please, this is what you want to do. Once you have two buttons like this, one needs to be, maybe the secondary button or the tertiary button or the ghost button. Ghost button is the ones with outline, okay? But don't use two primary buttons. You can use two ghost buttons. We are just 7 minutes away from closing today. Okay. Since there are no more questions, let me go ahead and just talk a little bit about, I've talked about components, how to create components, and also how to get variants. Yes, Rachel, there will be results, but for those people that did not perform well, we have a couple of people that didn't perform well. We are going to reach out to them, and if they are unable to, they will get supplementary tests after 1 week. If they are unable to meet up with the score, their access will be restricted from the platform, right? Because we don't want people that will shift us backwards. We want everyone to, move ahead. But if they score better, we will definitely leave them on the platform. So if you score anything less than 40, like we discussed, anything less than 40, you'll be getting a message from us to confirm if you really want to continue, if you really want to continue, or you want to face business and school for now. So we'll give you an opportunity to do one more test, because it makes no sense if you are, if you are not spending your time wisely. It makes no sense. We want you to be intentional about this training. In as much as you are getting it free, some people paid for it and they don't want their money wasted. They want to make sure that the people that they are spending it on are also taking it serious, okay? So those people that score less than 50, they are going to receive a message from us. And if you score, less than 40, they are going to get a message from us. And the funny thing is, this is the least assessment. If you notice, it was not even timed, right? Subsequent ones are going to be timed. Subsequent ones are also going to be timed, okay? This is the only one that is not timed. Sir, have you started scoring us? Yes, we've started. How do we make the text to fit button well? How to make the text to fit into button well. I've just showed you how to make text to fit into I've shown you maybe I didn't get this question, but please, if you are doing your buttons, irrespective of what you are doing, I don't understand that question. I'm sorry, I don't understand that question. Once you use that height, if you use that height 44 and you use font size 16, line height 24, your padding 16, your button is okay. Your button is okay. Your button is okay. So last thing we're going to talk about is auto layout. Auto layout. Okay, we've actually talked about auto layouts. So if you have any question, drop them, because we are going to be signing out in the next 4 to 5 minutes. So let me take your questions now. If you have any other question, let's hear from you. Yes, your test results will be out after tonight, midnight. Oduna, don't worry, I think you scored above 50. So don't go and start preparing to focus on business alone or school. I think I saw your name. You scored more than 50. Yeah. So, any question? Okay. So in the So I'm just going to wait for 2 minutes more. If there are no questions, then we call it a day. And next week is going to be interesting, because next week we are going to complete some of the components, and then we'll begin to learn some certain things. Like from next week, we'll take a look at things like colors, okay, how to create your color and all those things. We are taking a look at them next week. And also we'll still explore how to use some advanced tools in Figma. Remember, like I said, the purpose here is to make sure you learn how to actually use Figma. Then we move to UX design. So when we move to UX design, there you will now learn how to conduct research and also learn how to draft out features. Although that is a little bit of product design, but a UX designer also should be able to know how to draft out features and create solutions for the problem they might encounter, you know. And after that, we'll move back to UI design to really design properly now. Now at this stage, your design is not supposed to have, excuse me, your design at this stage should be a design that when you put out there, you know, in your portfolio, it should get the attention of recruiters. That is the goal. Okay? Yeah, so that's the goal. Someone said, Bumi, the way I'm seeing you scored 100. Sir, I asked question about input field. We noticed that the placeholders, if a user wants to type on it, it disappears in real life. Please, how do we achieve this in Figma? That is now interaction design. In Figma, you achieve this using prototype. So for your prototype, when you are doing your prototype, okay, all those different states, from the normal state to the input state, basically what you want to do is, on your normal state, that's the normal state, you want to type in your label, right? Now, when you go to your input, the active state, you want to hide that label. So when you prototype them, just the way we did for those slider, that means on click, you drag that one. Please don't go and do it now. Don't go and do it now. Okay, you can do it now on another file, not that our file, because by the end of next week, we'll be having our first task review. So you are not sending it in. Instead, you'll be sharing your Figma file. And we expect that Figma file. You see that one we called we ask you to give a color and call Bootcamp. Please, we expect it to be uniform. If the person reviewing it lands on your file and then website is on top instead of cover, they will not review your file. Okay, they will not review your file. We want to make sure everything is uniform, so it should follow the same pattern. Please, if you want to explore, test out your skills for now, just get a new Figma file. You are not paying for it. You are not paying for it. Get a new Figma file and use that one to be exploring. Okay, do your exploration there, Ajala. Do your exploration there. But please, the main file we are working with, leave it as it is. Make sure you follow the same standards. How can someone score more than the overall mark? Overall mark is 100, and you say someone is about to score 150. Anyway, that's good. Yes, that's nice. I'm expecting some people to score 150. Okay, please, if you have not done your assessment or giving that feedback, please make sure you do that assessment. It's very important. It's very important. And then your feedback too is very important. Now, don't come and be a sleeper cell on the portal. By being there, you don't do assignments so that you don't fail and we'll discover you and kick you out. We know people that are active on the platform and people that are not. So it's at our discretion to restrict access to people that are not active. So don't think if you are not participating, we are not going to notice you. We will notice you. So participate, okay? Participate is very important. Okay, no other question. So guys, have a nice day. If you still have questions, as usual, you can drop them in on Telegram for your friends to help out. And if you are interested in getting more support, more dedicated support, you can subscribe to Guided Access for just the same amount as a pizza and ice cream, right? You subscribe, you get Guided Access. And the Guided Access, there are a lot of things coming up. In fact, the most important time you need this Guided Access, you understand this Guided Access, is by the time you are finishing your training. All those resources we mentioned, you will really need them to fast track your career. Okay, so if you are eventually going to join Guided Access next month or next 2 months, it's better you join now so you enjoy all the benefits than waiting till the end. Okay, yes, finally want to see my face. Yes, I think the people in Guided Access on Wednesday, they'll be seeing my face because we usually have some one-on-one meet on Wednesdays, so they will see my face. You find out now. You people are googling me. Anyway, any picture you see on Google, they are old pictures. I hardly post. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Bumi. Okay. Okay, guys. Have a nice day and enjoy your weekend. Good night and bye bye.